Alright, let's talk about timesheets. My day job, I am an administrative officer for the federal government, which means this is a topic I'm actually qualified to talk about. And I have a piano, so you know I'm smart. An out-of-tune piano, sure, but you know, baby steps. Your organization, be it a government agency, a Fortune 500 company, or some office in the middle of nowhere, needs to stop using timesheets. They're inefficient, unproductive, and a massive waste of money. And in this video, I'm going to prove it to you. One caveat before we begin, this is largely going to apply to salaried employees. I would imagine much of it would apply to hourly employees as well, but I suspect the distrust corporations have for their hourly employees would cause it to fall on deaf ears, so I won't waste my breath. Every 2 weeks, I and every other employee of the federal government have to stop what we're doing, open a web browser, and navigate to our timesheet, including remembering and coming up with new passwords every 90 days. Seriously, how have we as a species not learned how dumb that is? Sometimes the hours are filled in automatically using a default schedule, and sometimes we have to fill them in ourselves. Sometimes we have to put in leave, choosing between an insane amount of overlapping leave codes. And sometimes there are special circumstances like snow days or early dismissals that confuse the hell out of everybody and make the timekeeper's life that much harder. And it serves no purpose. None at all. You think it does. You think it's to track how many hours an employee worked, how much leave they took, etc. After all, how would we know what to pay these people if they didn't shuffle in every 2 weeks to fill out their time cards? We use timesheets as a holdover from the factory days when employees literally punched in and out, and while timesheets in the modern era aren't quite a cargo cult remnant of an earlier era, they are fast getting there. No one, not even the senior administrators responsible for maintaining and monitoring these systems, really know what they are for anymore or how they work, and everyone is too afraid to question it. To give one minor example, a few months ago I took a day off using sick leave. I emailed my boss that morning letting him know I was sick and I'd be back in tomorrow. He replied, "Sure, get better," completely normal everyday interaction. I returned to work and life continued on. At the end of the pay period, I needed to fill out and certify my time card. I put my 8 hours of sick leave on the appropriate date and approved it. The timesheet is then automatically routed to my supervisor for approval. Isn't the future neat? My supervisor then rejected the timesheet back to me and asked me to remember to submit a leave request for the sick day I had taken. This is what I should have done, put in a leave request for the time I wanted to take off. Right? Wrong. In the government, we have what's called a statement of record. This is the official form of officialdom, the only record that matters. If there's an audit or a lawsuit or God himself wants to know what happened, you consult the system of record. In this case, the system of record is the timesheet. In other words, when I put my sick leave on the timesheet and my supervisor approves it, that counts as the approval for the sick leave, not the leave request. A leave request should only really be used when you are aware of leave in advance and want approval from your boss to take it, like for an upcoming vacation or a doctor's appointment. There's literally zero reason to fill out the extra paperwork of a leave request in the event of taking an unexpected day off. But my boss didn't know that. No one's boss knows that. It's not his fault. He's just trying to make sure all the forms are filled out, the I's are dotted, and the T's crossed without understanding the logic behind them. You know, like a cargo cult. Because we, as a society, have completely lost track of what these forms are for and what they represent. That's also why there are 9,000 leave codes for every possible reason someone could take leave. Seriously, look at this list. Try and make sense of it. My professional job is to understand this stuff, and even I get cross-eyed looking at it. But all of these codes aren't here not because they are needed. Oh no. These codes are here because someone might someday want a report breaking down the different reasons people are taking leave. And let me tell you, I've worked at the absolute highest levels of government, and these reports never happen. On the off chance they do happen, no one ever reads them. Do you know why no one ever reads them? Because we all have more important shit to do. Another supervisor of mine, hi Jamie, had this wonderful phrase she used to use all the time that I just fell in love with. We're spending dollars to chase pennies. This is going to be a bit of a tangent, but if you can understand this, you will understand my entire approach to business and why all of this, including time cards, pisses me the hell off. See, before I worked for the government, I worked for a multi-billion-dollar-a-year corporation here in the DC area. This company owned everything from office buildings to hotels and was absolutely every cliche of a terrible company you've ever heard of rolled into one. For the new manager orientation, they literally handed out copies of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People to everyone there and encouraged us to memorize it. I still have mine. I keep it to remind myself what an awful, stupid company they were to work for. My role in that company was as a low-level manager at a hotel, and there I witnessed one of the best examples of spending dollars to chase pennies I'll ever come across. At the end of every shift, we have to count the cash registers, same as any other retail business. This would have to be counted twice, once by the person leaving the shift and once by the person taking it over. And we'd have to write down everything in the drawer, all the pennies, all the nickels, and so forth. So far, so normal. Any overage would be put into an envelope, counted by the outgoing cashier and the manager, and deposited into a safe with both the cashier and manager signing a witness sheet. Much of these steps are replicated at other companies, though at this company, 2 people had to count and witness each step and sign multiple forms attesting to the money counted and deposited. At most companies, this process takes 5 minutes, but at this company, it took closer to 15 minutes every single shift. But here's where things get really bonkers. If the count were off by a single penny, 3 write-ups would have to happen. The outgoing cashier would get written up, including a meeting with their manager in the manager's office. The incoming cashier would get written up for accepting a drawer that wasn't the right amount, and the manager on duty would get written up because they were responsible for the failures of their subordinates. Each of these write-ups involved a manager sitting down, writing out the form, including the dates, times, and personnel involved, like it was some kind of police report, and having a closed-door meeting in their office to chew out the employee over losing a penny. Do you have any idea how much payroll that soaks up? I made like $20 an hour in that job. I know, it was a crappy job and I was happy to leave it. So, dear listener, let's do some math. If it takes 10 minutes to write up the write-ups and sit down with the 2 employees, and 10 minutes for my supervisor to do the same for me, that means I spent a half an hour on that crap, or $10. That doesn't include the payroll for the time my supervisor, who made around $25 an hour, and the 2 hourly employees who made around $12 an hour. So $2 for each of the hourly employees, plus $10 for me, plus $4 for my supervisor, equals $18 spent over 1 stupid penny. The company did this out of equal parts lunacy, stupidity, and greed, naively believing this would curtail mistakes, or maliciously believing it would create a culture of fear in which employees would add their own money to the till to avoid all of the paperwork. But that's enough of that tangent. Let's get back to time cards. The thing that tangent and the time cards have in common isn't the fear, it's the math. So let's look at some rough numbers. The average timekeeper in the federal government is a GS9. In 2021, a GS9 Step 1, don't ask, makes about $60,000 per year in the DC locality. Again, don't ask, we don't have time. On average, a unit of anywhere from 100 to 300 employees has 1 timekeeper. The federal government is estimated to have some 2.1 million civilian employees currently. So 2.1 million divided by a rough unit size of 300 gives us 7,000 timekeepers in the federal government. 7,000 times $60,000 gives us a total of 420 million. Oh math, you're useful after all. The federal government is spending roughly $400 million a year on timekeeping. Now that number is some real back-of-the-napkin math, if we're being honest, and isn't entirely accurate. For one, all timekeepers that I'm aware of have collateral duties. They do more than just timekeeping. So that number should come down depending on how many hours a pay period they spend on timekeeping duties. But that number also doesn't count the amount of time other non-timekeeping employees spend on those tasks either. So the number should go up. But let's say it's half that, only 200 million, or a quarter of that to 100 million. Do you really want to spend $100 million a year on timekeeping? And remember, I'm not talking about our economy conceptually here, I'm talking about our government. You know, the one we pay taxes toward. Yeah, we spend trillions of dollars a year on tanks and airplanes and Social Security and all the rest, but we also waste a colossal amount of money on bullshit that doesn't matter. No one cares about my time card and no one cares about yours either. So why are we still doing it? Alright, enough yelling at the sky. If the system is so bad, how do we fix it? This is actually simpler than it appears, and I think we can do it without rampant fraud and abuse. Stick with me, this will make sense soon enough. We should get away from time cards, or at least time cards that need to be manually approved by either the employee or the supervisor. Every 2 weeks, your time card should pre-populate with your default schedule, as it already does for a lot of people. Then it should automatically be approved. No certifying, no supervisory approval. If an employee took leave or needs to take leave, it is incumbent upon them to go in and add it to their time card before it certifies. Just like today, if a mistake is made, a corrected time card could be made later. A team of, let's say, 5 full-time timekeepers, probably at the GS11 level, so roughly $70,000 a year, would be responsible for auditing these time cards. I'd have 1 team per department, so a rough cost of $350,000 per year per department. 15 major departments in the federal government, plus a 16th to represent all the independent agencies, and you get a rough cost of $5.6 million. Now this is a real cost minus benefits, as I'd have our timekeepers do this one task full-time, no collateral duties. The timekeepers would audit and investigate time cards at random, similar to some of the functions provided by the Inspector General's office. If an employee gets caught with a fraudulent time card they can't explain, such as not putting leave on the time card when they took time off, they get fired. No warnings, no probation, just plain fired. That should prove a strong enough deterrent to people who think they can game the system. With this one simple fix the government doesn't want you to know about, we could save taxpayers some $415 million a year. That's a bigger improvement in the budget than Congress has managed to make in the past 3 decades. And that $415 million can go to more tanks or feeding homeless people or medical bills or whatever. The government and really all large organizations are riddled with inefficiencies like this. I'm currently working on a book about the ones I found in the federal government, so follow me on Twitter for when that releases. But the real point here is that if we just simply stop and ask why we do these things, we can make a lot of progress towards fixing them. Most of the people I work with just accept things how they are. They get upset about having to stop what they're doing and fill out their time card, or they get annoyed when the timekeeper has to send out yet another email reminder telling them to approve their timesheets or they won't get paid. It's not only unproductive, it's unnecessary and stupendously expensive. Timesheets are stupid and you should stop using them. My name is Michael Aguero. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you can support the channel by buying my stories on Google Play. I basically make these videos as ads for my writing, so if you want me to keep making them, buy my books. The latest is called Recon and Recovery. It's a pulpy sci-fi adventure you can pick up for only $2. Every bit of support helps. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.